British Boxing Board of Control. I agree with you and I agree with Simon, and it's very important to me, regardless of what you think, that Conor Benn fights in this country again. The only way that's going to happen is if ego is dropped from both sides and Conor is...
But Eddie, you've got a situation, mate, where you've got a fighter at this moment in time that's failed drugs test, right? And all I hear from you is how you're going to get him fighting again.
Yeah.
How he must get out fighting. Surely to Christ, he must get himself cleared and in a position.
Okay.
But and what you're doing is you're diminishing the argument about how important drugs are in the system of this sport by suggesting that the most important thing he needs to do is get out and fight.
No, I think
that's outrageous.
He hasn't
mate.
fought for a year. He's gone through this process with the WBC, who are in charge of that testing process. They've cleared him. They've reinstated him in the rankings. He's clear to fight in any jurisdiction in the world other than in the UK. I completely agree with you.
Yep.
I want Conor Benn to get with the British Boxing Board of Control, to go through this process. I want him to resume his career in this country.
So why is he not doing that?
Because at the moment he has a legal situation with the board. He doesn't want to deal with the board. They tried to slap a 100 grand fine on him, not in relation to the board.
I'm going to simplify this before we leave the Conor Benn situation.
No, but I'll tell you, one second. And I'm not saying to you it's correct. Right? I'm not sitting here saying...
But even his own father said on the Piers Morgan interview, which, by the way, I thought was a dreadful thing for him to have done, right? But the bottom line is that even his own father said he should face the British Boxing Board of Control. He's got a legal issue with them because they've slapped a 100 grand fine on him because he won't cooperate with the request for them to be able to adjudicate.
No.
Well, that's what the British Boxing Board of Control say. And with that in mind, the only reason I think he doesn't want to sit in front of... And I want Conor Benn not to be guilty. I've always wanted him not to be guilty. I think he's a super kid. I hated the fight. I thought it was a legacy fight that makes you and those around you a lot of money. I didn't like it, and I didn't like the state of Chris Eubank when he shredded to get down to that weight. And I'm not even going to bring his own father into it, right? And the rantings and the discreditation that other people try to do with him. But the bottom line is the reason why he doesn't want to get in front of the British Boxing Board of Control is the one terminology that no one likes, which is strict liability.
Strict liability, unless proven otherwise.
And the WBC is a building block for smart-ass lawyers to try and find a way around it, and you know it is.
He's not going to fight here again, Eddie, is he?
Govern that testing. Ultimately, what he did was he went to the people...
But they've got no relevance, have they?
But Simon, you can't ignore the fact that it's the testing programme. He had to go through that process.
And you can't ignore the fact that UKAD has to respond, and any fighter that signs up to UK, or any fighter that's licensed, which he was at the time. He's always licensed up now, but at the time he was licensed.
Didn't renew it. Actually.
Okay, didn't renew it then. Any fighter that's got a British Boxing Board British Boxing license has to accept the fact that the moment an adverse finding is done, whether it's a private laboratory and a WADA approved private laboratory, UKAD get jurisdiction, and that's a fact.
Okay.
That's a fact.
Then what?
And it's also a fact that there are other contracts that you've got in place that enable you to take fighters out of it,
and it's not a fact
without the sanctioning body.
And it's not a fact. No, and it's not a fact regarding precedents around VADA and UK testing.
Precedent changes with new law.
Let me throw this at you.
There's no new law in the rules of the British Boxing Board.
Such is the reputational damage on Conor Benn. We're not going to see him fight in this country again, are we?
Yeah, absolutely, you are. He has to fight in this country. I mean, I don't want him to continue his career fighting just around the world. There's massive... Look, you've got every fighter under the sun.
The mud sticks, Eddie.
Jim,
you ask fight fans down the stairs at London Bridge,
Jim,
is he innocent or guilty? You know what you're going to get back.
And that's what he has to live with. Whether he's played it badly, which he has at times, but he's played it real.
But you're doing him a disservice.
No, I'm not doing him a disservice.
You want him to fight Manny Pacquiao
again.
You want him to fight Kell Brook maybe somewhere else.
Absolutely. Listen, at the end of the day, it's been a year since he's fought. It's nearly a year since the test coming up in a couple of months. I've got every fighter under the sun wanting to fight Conor Benn.
But why has it been a year? He's had 6 months to sit in front of the British Boxing Board of Control. He refuses to do his answer to the British Boxing Board of Control, and I know you won't condone this, is the reason why I won't sit in front of them is because they can do one.
No, well, that's not...
That's not a
The
debate.
reason he doesn't want to is because of the way that he was treated in the initial process. He believes...
But you're going to exacerbate it. You're going to condone it by saying, I'm going to get him out.
No,
I'm going to get him out.
I'm going to get him
a big fight against Manny Pacquiao.
I'm going to get him
What
together.
you should be doing is using your positive influence as a blue chip promoter saying you don't fight until you deal with these guys.
No, I won't be doing that. But what I will be doing is I want you to get in front of the British Boxing Board of Control.
Oh, after you've been paid and got fights in the fight centre.
Because
you should be making him do it properly.
No, look, he's got options to fight in many different
jurisdictions. Created by you?
No, not at all. Created by everybody. You think Kell Brook? You think I spoke to Kell Brook and say, call him out all day on social media? No. Manny Pacquiao, every day, bombarding me for fights.
Who's going to write the cheque?
It depends where the fight is.
You.
Depends where the fight is.
You're going to write the cheque, or you're going to be involved in the cheque being written.
He has now been cleared by the WBC.
No, he
back
hasn't.
Yes, he has.
No, he hasn't.
Yes, he has.
No, he hasn't.
Yes, he
no,
has.
he hasn't.
Yes, he has.
No, he hasn't.
Yes, he has.
He's been given mitigating
No,
circumstances. That's
he's
not the
been
same as being
reinstated.
cleared.
He's been cleared to fight.
He
again.
hasn't been cleared,
Yes,
Eddie.
he has.
Let's finish
hasn't been
off.
exonerated.
He's
Let's
been
finish
cleared to
this
fight.
off.
Circumstances.
Let's finish this off. In a sentence, Eddie. Convince the biggest skeptic out there in a sentence. Conor Benn, innocent or guilty?
I think, from what he just said 2 minutes ago, I think he thinks he's innocent in respect of particularly knowingly ingesting substances to improve his performance.
But guess what happens then?
No.
Still gets banned.
Yes, and actually, subject to proving that contamination.
Intent.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, fair
Okay.
enough.
But
Fair
I
enough.
think,
Okay, Conor, prove it.
but what
Prove
I'm
it.
saying is,
Away you go, son.
Yeah.
Prove it.
Prove it.
I agree.
And you should be leading him by the nose, not making
and I
fights
will.
for him.
So are you
No,
going to lead him
I-
forward? Are you going to lead him forward then?
100%.
To proving his innocence.
He has to sit down, in
After
my
he's made
opinion, with the
fights.
British
So we
Boxing
can
Board
count
of
on
Control.
you, Eddie.
Yeah,
You're going to be front and
I can't make
centre.
the decision for Conor Benn.
But you
Of
can make,
helping
but you can
improve
make
his
fights for him,
innocence.
though, can't you?
Yeah, but I can't make the
So then
decision
you
for him.
remove the obligation upon him. If there's a pressure down on him to not be able to fight, and he has to get in front of the British Boxing Board of Control under your direction, and you refuse to promote him until he does it, he'll be in front of
I
him.
refuse to promote him in this country.
'Cause you
Absolutely.
can't.
Yes, I can. I can go with another governing body.
Oh, well done you.
Which is what
Which is what
I
you
would
wanted to
never
do
done.
when you tried to get around it last
Absolutely
time.
no.
All right.
Never, ever,
Okay.
ever.
Time
I'm telling
out.
you now. 1 second, Jim. 1 second. I would never, ever, ever use another jurisdiction
Good.
in this country other than the British Boxing Board of Control. Even
Time
though I feel like they handled this terribly. I would never,
Ages
ever.
abetted by you and Conor.
No?
You're
not at all.
going to play a big part, Eddie, in proving Conor's innocence before he fights again.
Yeah, I mean,
Before he fights again.
ultimately, he's been cleared to fight again. Not in this country yet
Before
until
he
sits
fights,
down.
regardless of where it is.
He will fight in June. Whether that takes place after or before a meeting with the British Boxing Board
And
of
you're
Control,
morally wrong
we'll
to do
find
it.
out. No,
You're morally
not at
wrong
all.
to do it.
Because,
Yes,
Simon,
you are.
you know why? How can you be morally wrong when I believe in him? And I believe he's innocent. And he's
Because it
cleared to
suits
fight.
you.
I
He's
believe
cleared
it's
to fight.
12
He
noon,
can fight
guys.
in any country.
We will talk
No.
Anthony Joshua. We will talk Tyson Fury in the next half hour.
We're very similar in many ways, me and you. Some ways. But from a business sense,
I'll let you have that.
let me put this to you.
Go ahead.
Joshua Buatsi, from the professional debut, is a matchroom fighter. Invested in him his whole career, right? And it's a significant investment across purses.
Are you
at
ahead
home.
yet?
Are you going to let? No, absolutely
You're
miles
behind still.
behind. Miles behind on
Okay.
Joshua Buatsi. Miles behind. See, the ticket sales for the Craig Richards fight. It was a good example. And I've seen the viewing figures versus other fighters. That's why we have to make commercial decisions. Going back to that, we get him a British title fight. He gets a European title fight. Right? We box him at Madison Square Garden. We get him to #1 in the world somehow, because that's our job. And we walk him in to a £1.25 million fight with Dmitry Bivol for the world title.
Which he
in
acknowledges.
neutral territory.
Which he acknowledges.
Okay. Now, his contract's up. #1, Dmitry Bivol has to have a rematch clause. Right?
Mhm.
So we have to extend that contract anyway.
Fair enough.
We ask for a 3-fight extension if he was to go on and win the world title for a huge amount of money, probably walk into the Canelo Alvarez fight for $7 million like Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders did. That's complete industry standard. You've made a huge investment.
And you've
given
got
him a
matching
huge
rights and all
payday.
that goes with it.
Yeah,
I understand all that.
That's the situation there. The reality is his team didn't want the Dmitry Bivol fight, which is no problem. But after that investment and getting to that position, we don't want another fight against a nobody where we're going to bleed money. We've given him the education. We've given him the platform. We've boxed him all around the world. Now's your chance to become world
But when
champion.
you moved from I mean, I actually agree with you on the DAZN thing, because I think VOD, if people can subscribe to Netflix, they can subscribe to DAZN. I actually don't think DAZN is a particularly good platform. Some of the content I've watched it hasn't been very good, and it surprises me that you've got to put the price up to $19.99 and
Well, that's
whatever else.
only if you
That's a
only if
commercial
you
reason.
don't only if you don't
And if you don't pay
subscribe
£99 up front. Right?
or $9.99 a month.
All right, okay. But the point for me is did any of these fighters, because they'll go with you, because I've always been a major advocate. I know how you pay your fighters. I know what you do and when you do it. Not what you pay them, but I know that you're straight down the line. No one mucks about you. They get paid on Monday morning after their fights. And I've always said that about you, both to you and about you.
Is that a
right?
compliment?
No, it's absolutely a compliment, because in this game, a lot of them don't, right? And he's always done that. But that doesn't alter the fact that when these guys came with you, say a Coley or Buatsi that were with you, and they moved to DAZN, they've all come away from it, or certainly in those two instances, with a great feeling that this might be all right for Matchroom, but it hasn't been particularly good for us. And then you're quite... Rather than accept the fact that sometimes you speculate to accumulate, and sometimes you accept the fact that you run the risk of investing in fighters, you don't make it every single time, you seem to be quite acerbic and facetious and vitriolic about people that choose not to take up your particular conditionality. I understand the fact if you want to make him a fight again, if it's a rematch clause against Bivol, I understand that. But if you want to stick him on a free fight deal after that, why should he need to?
No, he doesn't have to. He has the option to.
But after that, what you've done is becoming quite bitter and facetious about it.
I do. I mean, every day, but mostly around fights, I do 50 or 60 interviews a day with outlets. I get asked various questions. Sometimes my responses aren't perfect. Sometimes I speak from the heart, which I will always do, and I'll speak honestly. In my opinion. Right, whether you think I'm factually incorrect, like I do you on something.
Whether I think you're a snake oil salesman.
No. Well, I think that's a bit harsh. There's a lot I can say
you
about
would,
you personally, but you know.
But you have. You've said things about me personally.
Not really.
You said I'm the king of hypocrisy. With no basis for that.
You are the king of hypocrisy, but you talk like you're some kind of business expert. We know how that went for you.
No. In order to lose a lot of money, you have to make it in the first place. And if you're telling me to make 100 million quid,
it's a marathon, not a sprint,
to make 100 million quid,
mate,
to make 100 million quid out one business in 5 years. No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
No,
you went bankrupt.
No, I didn't.
What? Crystal Palace Football Club.
Don't be stupid.
Crystal Palace Football Club.
Don't be stupid, Eddie. I didn't go bankrupt at all.
Crystal Palace Football Club.
And don't say silly things that can get you into trouble, because I didn't go bankrupt in the slightest.
In that case, I apologise.
What I did was, like everybody else that has challenges in life.
Yeah.
No. What I did was, as the biggest creditor, because of the biggest banking crisis in the world, I took a view that I could no longer fund it anymore, put it into administration and wrote off 50 million quid. On the basis of the fact that I made 100 million quid. So get your facts right.
I apologise. You took the club into administration.
No, I didn't take it into administration. A secured creditor put it in there, and I had to take my medicine, which I've never complained about.
No, and
I've never bitched and whined about it. I've never gone about the fighters that run off with me and I invested in them and started crying about it.
Well, you've cried about many things. No,
I haven't.
But also...
Never cried about anything.
But you sit there and you don't acknowledge any side of business. What I'm saying to you, because you don't acknowledge the situation. Lawrence Okoli, another situation, okay? You have to make a call. Go back to the Crystal Palace days, right? And I'll say this to you. A player, right, gets an offer for, is out of contract or his contract's approaching. We've been there with Leighton Orient.
But I understand what
We've been there with Leighton Orient. And all of a sudden, you have an option to pay a certain amount of money or to let the fighter go. You have to make a commercial decision based on the ability of that player or the fighter, the draw, the numbers, everything around it.
But the point I was making, there's no implied criticism of that observation, right? Because the guy, you pay your money, he takes your choice, right? And so does the fighter. But the reaction from the fighters about being on DAZN is not a particularly complimentary one.
I disagree.
And it would seem that they had no choice, and I suspect that's probably the reality of their world that they live in, which is when you pitched up sticks and decided that Sky was no longer for you and a better opportunity for Matchroom and your billion-dollar pursuit, which, by the way, chapeau, well done for you. If you can get 60 million from Matchroom boxing and make 12 million pound a year, fantastic. Nice business. I know, it's just boxing. I know. I looked at the numbers the other day. Well done, you. 20% net on net. Very good. But the point is this, is that they look at it and they don't fancy it.
Eddie Hearn has been with us live since 11 o'clock and is still in studio with us now. We're going to talk... have you two piped down, actually? Yeah, it's all the personal stuff has stopped now in the last break, thankfully. Eddie, Anthony Joshua against Jermaine Franklin. Is this make or break for AJ?
Absolutely. I mean, and obviously, I'm a promoter. I'm hyping the fight. But at the same time, I am nervous about the fight. He's coming off 2 defeats, albeit to Alexander Usyk. We saw emotionally the position that he was in after the last fight because he wanted to win so badly. He's got a new trainer. He's taken himself to Dallas with a very, very small team to work his absolute socks off. You have to understand, like, sometimes the reason I speak so passionately about people, and the same with Conor Benn, is because I like them and I believe in them. They're people that are close to me. AJ particularly. Like, I take it very personally when AJ gets criticised because when I look at the resume and I look at his ability to make fights and his willingness to make fights, it really gets on my wick where he gets sort of overrun sometimes by fighters that want to speak on social media, which he never does.
Yeah.
When you just have to look at his resume. And Usyk, I get people saying...
But his star has fallen. AJ's star has fallen dramatically.
Jim, he's lost 2 fights on the bounce. He's no longer a world champion. Of course his star has fallen. But he's a man, in my opinion, that is an elite heavyweight. I believe he's top 3 heavyweight in the world, and sorry if that's such a crime, that wants to come back and try and regain his world heavyweight title. He's the purest individual. He's the hardest worker. He makes more sacrifices and commitments than any athlete I've seen, and he's my mate, right? So I am so pumped for his return, and I want him to go in there, and I want him to show people how good he is. I want him to believe in himself. I want him to enjoy life.
Yeah.
I don't want him to be sad. I want him to appreciate what he's achieved and how good he is.
No, the thing
and
is
I want him to go in there and I want him to make a statement.
If he beats Franklin, and we're going to cover it on TalkSport, and you guys have got it in DAZN. If he beats Franklin, and we'll talk about Fury Usyk in a moment, and Fury beats Usyk, are we at last going to see AJ Fury?
I mean, the whole we had a bad run around the Conor Benn stuff and then the Fury negotiations. Tyson Fury is good, or has been good in the past, of convincing people of certain things. And during those negotiations, he convinced people that it was my or it was AJ's fault. For the record, I don't think AJ should have boxed Usyk in December. Irrelevant.
Fury.
Fury.
Yeah, you're right.
He told me, take the fight.
I agree with you.
60-40, we take the fight. After Tyson Fury drew with Deontay Wilder the first time out, he wasn't world champion. He should have won that night, but he wasn't world champion. We offered Tyson Fury 60-40 for the fight, champion against challenger. He turned it down. He said, I want 50-50 as a challenger. We said no. This time around, AJ's the challenger. He accepted 60-40. Ego got involved. He said, I want maybe not. All of a sudden, we were getting demands and pressures every day, deadlines on social media. It must be signed today. It must be signed today. It fell through. He would fight Tyson Fury. He would sign to fight Tyson Fury now for the same terms that we agreed back in November. 60-40, etc., etc.
I believe that to be
I know.
true.
So when you
true.
say, will it happen? Like, I don't know. I mean,
do you think Fury would want to fight AJ?
Yeah, I think Fury has no fear of fighting anyone. I think Fury realises how good Usyk is, and I think Fury said, let's punt it out there at 70-30. He'll never take the fight.
You must wish Fury was your fighter.
He's a fantastic fighter, great name. I sat down with him in Monte Carlo, talked to him about signing him. He was about 27 stone. He was sweating. And I thought to myself, mate, there is no way you will ever get back in the ring. What he has done has been unbelievable. But what I cannot have is when people stop me in the street and say, I wish AJ would be more like Fury. He gave all his money away to charity.
Which he doesn't do.
You know, etc., etc. But he is a great entertainer. Sometimes he makes me look average in terms of spinning things. And for a fighter to do
spinning
that.
things?
Yeah.
You?
Yeah. Stop it, yeah.
Snake oil self?
Yeah. But at the same time, I think people are seeing through that now. You know, and I think if he does get 70-30, I think it's an unbelievable deal for Tyson Fury.
Are we right in believing that Fury Usyk will definitely happen?
I don't know. It's just the numbers that Tyson Fury wants for that fight. They are so far away from doing it at Wembley. But sometimes with Tyson, he does the unpredictable. And I think...
But it's moved on now, isn't it? He's gone from wanting 105p out of every 100, right? He's now moved into a territory where he's got his split. That fight's done, I think. It's done.
I think judging by some tweets from Frank and stuff like that, it sounds like it's there. I'm quite surprised. It's only 6 weeks away. Yeah. And Fury... But I thought there were times when Fury wouldn't fight Wilder, and he did it. So I kind of think he snookered himself into a position where Usyk, and fair play to Usyk, by the way, has turned around and gone, yeah.
But I think he's actually...
Because Frank Warren, I think he was actually on TalkSport, said, easy fight to make, 50-50. Yeah. And that was the perception of all parties. That it was a 50-50 deal.
And Tyson did what Tyson did. And I think Eddie was absolutely right. At the time, I thought he was right. I think there was no place... Ironically, one of Anthony's best friends is a very close friend of Michelle's, my partner. So I'm always getting castigated by him about my views on Anthony Joshua. I do think I do think he's a flat track bully, and I do think he's gotten found out. And I don't regard him in the same way that Eddie does. And I also don't regard him in the way that Eddie does because he's not a cash cow for me. But I do respect his achievements. But I do think it was absolutely right. People talking about this fight now with German Franklin, I think it's the right fight for him to take because it rebuilds. But then afterwards, if he can't fight Fury and he can't fight Usyk because they're tied up, right? I'd like to see him in with Dubois, or I'd like to see him in with Joe Joyce because they're ranked higher than him. He can take those fights. Wouldn't you take those fights?
Yeah, I don't think... I mean... The Dubois fight, I think Joyce is the guy that, I think Dubois is miles away in terms of, actually the heavyweight division of the elite guys. But I think Joyce is right in there. I think he's a very tough man to beat. Those guys have sparred thousands of rounds. I've seen it. It's brilliant to watch. Honestly.
Because that would be a great fight.
If you asked AJ about fighting Joe Joyce, no problem at all.
He would do it. If he comes through against Franklin, would you put him in against Wilder?
Absolutely. I think he has three options.
But can you make that fight with Frank?
What are the three options?
Frank with AJ.
Can you make that fight for AJ against Joyce?
Yes.
That's a fight you can make.
Yes, but I believe...
That's a fight Frank would make as well, wouldn't he?
I believe he's waiting also for the... Don't forget, Joe Joyce is pretty
Next
much there
line,
to fight for the world title.
What are the three options then, Eddie, for AJ?
The three options after Franklin, and he has to come through Franklin, are Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, and Dillian Whyte. And people say, oh, you throw Dillian Whyte in there because that's the one that's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, that's probably the easiest fight to make. And I don't think there's any disgrace going off the back of the Usyk fights. Jermaine Franklin, Dillian Whyte, Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder, that's a hell of a 2023.
I would have preferred you gone in against Dillian White because I think he's a slightly diminished force and it would make more credibility. But I do understand because I don't think Franklin gets a pass because it looks like he had a decent fight against Dillian
But he
White.
did.
He did. I understand he did. But on paper, he's not even inside the top 30. He's just inside the top 30 heavyweights in the world.
I mean, you want to choose box
Okay,
rec.
all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, but listen, Simon, he's a good fighter. He
I know,
had
I
a
saw
very
him.
close fight with Dillian White.
I saw him.
You know, on one hand, it's like people want to say, "Oh, Franklin beat Dillian White," and then you match him with AJ.
I know, I heard
people
it.
say AJ's over.
I heard you arguing about Zilly Zhang and the fight for Joe Joyce. I heard all that.
But that's the pressure.
That's you
that
again, feeling that everyone's getting up against you.
But you're saying you don't. Basically, what you're saying is you don't really agree with me that AJ's an elite heavyweight, right?
No, I do think he's I do think he's a.
You still think he's
Actually, Eddie's own way.
disrespected,
Yeah,
Eddie?
of course
You
he's
think it's
disrespected.
disrespected?
Are you serious?
Why is it disrespectful if it's an honest opinion?
Because you're not looking at the facts of who he fought at what times
I've
and
looked
the
at
run of fights
Molina,
that he's been
Dominic
on.
Brazil.
No.
I've looked at him hiding behind the jab
Klitschko.
against Ruiz. I've looked at him box. I
Hiding
went
behind
to
the
the
jab.
Joseph Parker
Or-
fight, which was a snooze fest. Okay, the referee killed that. I get that, but I look at it and say,
But he'd
nah.
had like 22 fights. He's unifying the
I know,
division. He's fighting.
but that's a
Klitschko.
different argument, though, isn't it?
No, but the run that he's been on
that's
is
a different
unbelievable. Anyway, what I want to
Finish
say
it off, Eddie.
is what I want to say. On one hand, he's not that good. On the other hand, Jermaine Franklin's an easy fight. He just had a life and death with Dillian White. I mean, so which one is it? Do you rate him or you're not? Tune
I
into
agree
the
with
zone
that
on
argument.
April
I
1st. You'll
agree with
find
that.
out. If he can't beat Jermaine Franklin,
Slime
if
talks,
he
snort
beats
him
him
out.
in style,
Exactly.
and I think
Eddie,
that's
I
what
wanna
you have
fi-
to
I wanna
acknowledge. If he does
finish
a
on
job
this.
on Jermaine
I
Franklin,
really
we can have a
appreciate you being
discussion,
in
yeah.
here. We've done an hour and a half live.
Can we do some
If you want to carry on, we can carry on, mate. I want to finish with this, and I just want you to round this off for us. Definitively, once and for all, if we finish on Conor Benn, just to get this right, you are prepared to promote Conor Benn fighting outside of the UK while he continues to prove in an attempt to prove his innocence.
Yes.
While he's still trying to
Yes.
prove his innocence, you'll promote him to fight outside the UK.
I will look at fights for Conor Benn and I will make a decision on where that fight will take place. I will also actively speak to Conor and the British Boxing Board of Control about going through the process to ensure that he gets a fair hearing and two, he tries to be able to box in this country. I do not want Conor Benn to fight around the world. I think this kid who has got a good heart and
Yeah, we're agreed on that.
regardless of
But
people's
we're looking
opinion,
at June, are we? We're looking at
he'll be
Pacquiao,
back in. Yeah, he'll be-
Pacquiao in
no,
June.
I don't think it will be back. Look, I want to make the Chris Eubank Jr. fight. These guys have been going at it to each other the last couple of weeks. For me as a promoter, I know the
But he's
build up will
signed to
be
fight Smith,
sensational.
though, isn't
No, he's not signed to fight Smith. No. And the money's 2 or 3 times what he'd get to fight Liam Smith.
So Chris Eubank Jr. is not signed up to fight Liam Smith. And what you're saying now, if we're going to finish on this, you want Ben to fight Eubank Jr.,
Correct.
the fight we were going to see, but we didn't see because of 2 failed drug tests. You're going to fix it outside the UK.
Potentially, if we can't get it in the UK, which looks unlikely for June. But I want to start that process, and it's both of them sitting down with a blank sheet of paper and a clear head to try and find out what needs to be done to make Conor Benn fight in this country again. But I'm ready at the same time, after the WBC hearing and after him being allowed to fight in any jurisdiction, to look at opportunities and potential fights.
Will
for Conor
Eubank Jr. not want certain proof that Conor's clean?
Benn. Of course. He'll be the most tested fighter. I mean, don't forget, he's still in all these programs. And by the way, I say again, and people choose to ignore it, Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. asked us to add an additional layer of testing to that fight above and beyond UCAD, which ultimately we paid for, irrelevant. But they said, we want full VADA testing. He must be full VADA tested, non-stop. He's still part of that program. He can be tested anytime. He's still openly willing to
Okay,
take
so we're going to see this
I'm sure
outside
he
the
is.
UK in June. That's what you want to try
Possibly.
and do.
You will
Ben
see
Eubank
Conor Benn.
Jr.
That's the fight I would like. But Kell Brook, Manny Pacquiao, they're calling him out 24/7. So
Okay.
we have to look at the options.
So what are you doing tonight? You off to the cinema
I'm going to
together?
take Simon
You-
out. Yeah, we're
you
going to have a
out?
nice romantic meal. We
Yeah.
carry it on. I think we could actually genuinely debate for a few more hours. Do you know what I mean? But
I
no,
agree.
listen, I appreciate you giving me my time. I hope you enjoyed it.
What do you want to say to Eddie?
Nice to see him. Listen, whatever I may or may not think about some of the things he says and doesn't say, I do also respect the acumen he brings to the table. I don't think he's right in this situation. I think there is an immorality about promoting Conor until he clears it up. I don't think he did his job at the outset. I do think he used undue influence, but I do also I do also respect that. I thought it was a wonderful thing he did the other day when he sat in front of the cameras and goes, "Who puts these fights on? Moi." I thought, there you go, P.T. Barnum. That's a showman. That's what he needs. But it also needs blue chip guys to act in a blue chip way, and he doesn't sometimes.
Do you respect this man?
I do, actually. I think he's very bright and I think he's very knowledgeable. I just want to make sure that sometimes in certain situations...
I share your knowledge.
No.
Or your version of it.
You'll never have my knowledge in boxing.
Oh, it's true, because you're forgotten one I'll never know.
No.
But I could catch up.
No,
you never know.
You won't.
But probably right.
And
probably
actually,
right.
in terms of knowledge...
But I just do it differently.
In terms of knowledge, you've got much more... You're much smarter than me. But in boxing...
Well, I didn't think that was a debate anyway.
No. But I'm telling you nicely. I mean, look, you're a disc jockey, and
I'm a failed businessman, according to you.
Failed harsh. It didn't go well, but
Decent last.
listen, it probably
Decent
happened to me
our
one day.
times.
I doubt it.
Eddie, sincerely, thank you for that.
Thank you very much for having me.
Stay with us.